who does all the programming for this conference, and without him we couldn't actually do it. As you heard me say, I've known him for many years when we used to work together in Prague, and he used to make my life a misery, even though I was his boss. Anyway, over to Neil Mcmahon.
Helena was my boss.
He's going to talk about exploiting.
Indeed, yes. Thank you very much. Sure, and he was obviously fishing for a compliment there, but I don't have time to give him one back at the moment. So we will just crack straight on with the key to English as a foreign language teaching, exploiting the C word. So first of all, of course, I bet you all want to find out, what is the C word? What do you think is, or what do you think I think is, the most important word, the key word to teaching successfully in a foreign language context? Answers in the chat box, and very, very nice of you to say cats there, Danny, because obviously you know my talks very well, that cats will appear at some point. Cats are even more crucial when it comes to teaching. But what can we exploit? Cats is a good thing. I will exploit some. Many others can't. Yes, that's a rather negative one, Jessica, but I like it. Fits in. Not too far away. The cells have been exploited throughout history, but I don't think that helps us with English language teaching too much. You're all being extremely amusing. Exploit chats is a good one, since we've been talking about sort of fluency and speaking and pronunciation a lot today, Leah. No one seems to want to come up with the right answer. They're just being very polite and making me feel that this talk is worthwhile. So, are you ready? The answer is the context. You can all breathe a sigh of relief that didn't come out with the other word you were thinking about. But I think everything in our teaching, and the students can only learn things in context. And so the aim of today's talk is basically to explore ways in which we can set up those contexts, maintain them throughout a lesson, exploiting them, of course, the whole time, and extending them as well, particularly when it comes to fluency, productive activities. Therefore, providing clarity for our students, flowing our lessons, motivating the students, and hopefully enhancing our lessons. So I'm not promising too much there, but we'll see how we can go. And I'm not just talking about skills lessons, I'm not just talking about language lessons, but both. And I'm going to run you through a kind of skills language lesson to show you how the context is important all the way through it. So, therefore, providing a context for the importance of context. Have I said the word enough times already? You'll be sick of it. First, a little quiz for you to get you going and get you thinking about the importance of context, and particularly in the context of vocabulary teaching. I'm going to ask you a question. I want the answers in the chat box, please, quick as you can. What's the opposite of light? Very easy question. Let's see who gets the answer first. Quick. There we go. Gordana. We knew it was between Gordana and Danny. Gordana was quickest on the keyboard and said dark. Danny, on the other hand, said heavy. And of course, you're both correct, as Paula has pointed out. Gordana, I thought big was another another opposite of light, but I think you're just celebrating your victory. Brilliant. So let's see what we think. Milk, Edward. We'll come to milk. Reminds me of milk. Obviously, it depends on the context. Sometimes it's light, sometimes it's dark. In this context, the opposite. Sorry, not sometimes it's light. Sometimes it's heavy, sometimes it's dark. in this context it's heavy, and in this context, no, in that context it's dark, and in this context it's heavy. You don't have a dark suit where you could. But I think, as Edward is implying by his answer, there are, of course, other contexts as well in which we use light. For example, what's the opposite of light in this context? And this is a fire created by me. So I lit this fire, and then what did I do when it got out of hand and it nearly burnt down the cabaña I was staying in? We put it out, exactly. So we have light a fire, put out a fire, or extinguish a fire, if you're being more formal. What about in this context? And there they are, Danny. I'm exploiting my cats. My cats, these are the rat on the left, whose real name is Indiana Jones, but we call him the rat, and Pushkin on the right, and they provide me with lots of light entertainment. So what would the opposite be in that context? Heavy entertainment? Did we talk about heavy entertainment? Well, my cats give me lots of intense entertainment, Chris, as well. And Liam's trying to tell me my cats aren't cultured. I'm not having that, Liam, for 1 second. I think I'll go with Katie's serious entertainment. Yes, or serious programming or something, etc. Brilliant. And what about in this context? We've got lots of light things there. I wouldn't need to go anywhere near any of them. Light crisp, light mayonnaise, light cheese, light salad dressings. Danny's, along with me, full fat. Yeah, I prefer full fat to fatty, Alice. Thank you for that. Full fat crisps, etc. Or just crisps, I think, actually, because obviously at one stage light didn't exist, and so things were just crisps or mayonnaise. So the opposite would just be that. And one final context. Look, there you are. There's my light lunch. That's yesterday's lunch. Today I've had to go without lunch, and I'm not tired yet, Sean, but I'm starting hungry. So what would be the opposite of light in the context of a light lunch? Who knows? A full lunch? Yeah, something like that. I think I might go for a 3-course meal myself. You'd have to change the whole context. But basically, the context is key to the understanding of the meaning of the word. So substantial, I like that one. Very nice. Okay. Now, the question is, if you're teaching the word light or its opposites, would you teach all of these words and all of these meanings at the same time? Quick yes or no, please, in the chat box. Just to check that you agree with me. No, good. Yeah. Oh, Katie would say yes. I'd say no. I would only teach the language based in its context and stay in that context. And then when they come across it in another context, they'll maybe remember the previous context, and that will enhance those ones. But if you try and teach the different contexts, they'll get confused and probably end up not learning any of them. So I would say always stick to the context, which is why I think we need to make sure we're exploiting the context and keeping the context in mind all the way through the lesson. So how can we do that? Well, remember that my context isn't your context. Some photos I took. There's my context of having my lunch on my desk while I'm teaching these lovely CELTA students at International House in Buenos Aires probably isn't the same as your context, and certainly isn't the same as the context of my students who would maybe go downtown for their lunch there. But everyone has their own context, and so you've got to keep that in mind, and you've got to try and get the students into your context in your lessons. Hopefully I'm going to be able to help you to do that during this talk. And so, first of all, we're going to start with a skills lesson and then take it into a language lesson. So we'll start our skills with a receptive skills lesson, and hopefully you can help me with the stages of a receptive skills lesson. So, for example, we will start with a lead-in, introducing the topic of the text we're going to be receiving, either reading or listening. What other tasks would you do with a text? If you could quickly help me with the stages of a receptive skills lesson. Okay, so you're going into a lot of detail there, Danny, with different types of, what do those tasks lead to that you're doing there, making predictions? And then what is it? Yeah, you might well have some pre-teach vocabulary. So it is a skills lesson. Let's see. Yeah, so you're still, I think you're actually answering a different question. You're actually talking about what would you do in the lead-in. But I'm going for, Jessica's more along the lines of what I'm asking for is what kind of tasks are you doing? So I would start with the lead-in. She's got a pre-task, a while task, and a post-task. Yeah. Danny, you can see Danny's done the Delta International Buenos Aires with his activating of schemata. Certainly you would do that in order to lead into the gist, all of those things you were talking about in the lead-in. And then you would have a gist task, first reading of the text, and then a detailed task, go into more detail, and then you would follow that up with a productive task. Okay. Now that's a very basic, straightforward kind of receptive skills lesson. And if you want to go into that in more detail, if you haven't seen that order before, or if you want to go beyond that, I can recommend one of our live online workshops that was done by Chris also a couple of years ago, called The 7 Musts of Receptive Skills. And that talks you through those if you want to go into more detail. What I'm going to do is to go through each of those stages and look at how to exploit the context through each stage of the lesson. And what better way of doing that than to give you an example? And my example comes from this book. Anybody recognize the book? And who was the author of this book? Why did I choose this book? You haven't got time to answer that question. Well, you have, because I need to drink water. No one's going to, I guess. So, I'll tell you. It's Global, Neil, there, you got that. Yep, and of course, who wrote Global? But Lindsay Glenfield, who was our first plenary speaker this morning. That's the only reason I chose it. And so I just randomly chose one page. I literally opened the book out a page of a reading lesson, reading and language lesson, so I could talk about both. And so let's look first at my lead-in to this lesson. What is the aim of the lead-in? To sell the text to the students, to get students to want to read the text. And so provide the context for the whole of your lesson. What better way to do that than personalize the context for the students? Get them talking about themselves, their ideas, and show them the relevance of the text for them, so they really want to read the text. How can we do that? Well, in the book, the lead-in to the text is, look at these two pictures. Do you like either of these things? Okay, which is personalized, and it is getting the students to think for themselves and give their opinions. But it's it's a yes/no question, so we're certainly not extending the context here, are we? They might say, yeah, I like that. If you're lucky, they'll give you a reason why. How can we make that more personalized, more extended, and really taking it into the students' lives? And also, not just presenting it as, oh, so today we're looking at the next page in the book, and it has these two pictures. Which one do you like? but trying to flow even from previous lessons or their previous learning. So a few suggestions I would make are things like this. Maybe first they talk about the weekend, what did they do, where did they go, and you can say, oh, well, I went to an amusement park, and so I thought we could read about this amusement park. Or perhaps, oh, my brother was emailing me the other day and he told me about his fantastic day trip he took his kids to this amusement park. Look at pictures, blah, blah, blah. My sister sent me a postcard from an amusement park and I thought I'd talk about it with you. I'm reading, all of these different ideas. Just make it even more personalized and give you a real reason for teaching the lesson, even though the lesson's coming out of the course book. The students follow this all the time. And it just gives them a better link to this. I've saved that question for later, Paula. We'll be coming to it. A very nice idea from you there. Who's moving my slides around? No. So, after the reading, we have the gist task. And what is the aim of the gist task? But to say hello to the text. The students are meeting the text for the first time. It's their first impression. And our challenge to exploit the context is to make sure the task is authentic. Would they read the text like this in real life? And is it relevant to them and real life contexts? So let's go back to the book and look at the original gist task. And you'll see, if you look at exercise 2 there, it says quickly read 10 facts about the amusement park. Find the world and find the answers to these questions. And there's lots of different questions and they're quite detailed. In fact, that shows us there isn't a gist task at all for this, probably because of the type of text it is. So we need to come up with our own. And what better way to come up with our own than think, what's the context? How would we read this in real life? 10 facts about amusement parks. Well, if I was to read 10 facts about amusement parks, I would ask myself the following questions. There are the facts for you. Which of this information is new for me? Which of these facts are new? And which of these facts are old? For instance, or which do I find interesting, which are dull, which are obvious? And so you're just getting the students there to quickly read through and think what's interesting for you, what do you respond to? And that is saying hello to the text. So that is a gist task. Alternatively, you could say, okay, you're going to read about 10 facts about an amusement park. Can you predict any of them? What do you think is going to be mentioned? And again, as a prediction task, that would be for gist as well. I don't know if the sound is fluctuating from my... Is that any better? If you can hear me. Maybe I'm just talking too quickly for the technology. Trying to get through the time. Then we head into the detailed task, which again is more detailed. The aim there is to demonstrate the students have understood the text, that they've read it in detail and they've understood the details and got the things out, the communication that the text is trying to get across. So again, we're looking for an authentic task and the real life context. This time we can go back to the exercise because this is a detailed task and it says read those facts and answer questions. Where did the roller coaster come from? Where was the first amusement park? What do the modern amusement parks have? Okay, I'll take my video off so that you can't see me. You will know what I look like. And hold my mic here. Hopefully that will be better. Strange, it's been fine all day long till I come to talk. So, again, you can answer those questions. Where did the roller coaster come from? I mean, how interesting is that to start with? What is the most popular amusement park outside the United States? They read and they find out, and it's there for them in the text pretty much. Indeed, Danny, indeed. Fits in with the title of the talk. So I'm trying to make the context more real life, more authentic, and so I would say to the students, okay, read these 10 facts again. Which of these would you share with someone you're going to an amusement park with? Which do you think are impressive for someone? Or, depending on your students, perhaps you'd ask them, which would you share with your children if you were taking them to an amusement park? Or, I don't know if anyone's been on a date to an amusement park. It's quite a good place to go on a date, because it's particularly a blind date, if you don't like the other person, you can stick them on the roller coaster and then run away. But if you're trying to impress the person, which of these facts about amusement parks would you use? But these are a much more authentic task. You've read a text and the idea is to communicate it with people. So there you go. And by doing this, the students are showing that they've understood the text. And if none of them mention one or two of the facts, you can ask them other follow-up questions about that. Why isn't this interesting? Did you know it already, etc. But you're making the reading much more realistic and authentic for the students by putting it in their context, which takes us on to our follow-up productive task and getting the students speaking about what they've been reading, or of course listening. Everything I've been saying, of course, also stands for listening, because we're talking about receptive skills. So we want our students to respond to the text, and we want to exploit the text to get them producing. But we wanted to extend the context and get them to really use the language and put them into a real-life situation, not just get them to answer some questions, particularly if they're yes or no questions, but getting them into a role, into a situation, giving them a real reason to produce the language. So let's see if the book does that, and let's see if we can do it. And so the follow-up productive task from the book is, have you ever been to an amusement park? Is there one in your country? Okay, which were actually suggestions we had for the lead-in to the task, weren't they? And of course, there is a problem. Both of these questions, my students, a lot of them would just say, have you ever been to an amusement park? Yes, I have. Is there one in your country? Yes, there is. And the teacher then has to get involved to say, okay, did you enjoy it, etc., blah, blah, blah. What's the one in your country like? Are there better ones in other countries? And so you're asking lots of follow-up questions and making it teacher-centered because you don't have a real context for the students to talk to each other in the first place. So let's see if we can do any better. What about getting them to survey passerbys about amusement parks? They write questions, they pretend each other are passers-by, or if you're in an English-speaking environment, they can go out to the streets and, excuse me, have you got 5 minutes to talk to me about amusement parks? Tell each other about your last visit to an amusement park and discuss who had the best time. So you're giving them a real reason to try and give each other as much information as possible. That kind of thing. So more ideas about just extending the context. Recommend an alternative to a tourist visitor. So we know there is this amusement park in Tigre in Buenos Aires, but what better things are there for people to do when they come to visit Buenos Aires? You could have a debate about Disney. Should you take your students to Disney when they're 15, as people do here in Buenos Aires? What are the pros and cons of inculcating your babies in the world of Disney, etc.? Have a debate. Disney dumbs down our students. Gordana, that's rather cheeky of you. Some more ideas. Maybe get them to tweet about a visit to an amusement park. I'm at an amusement park, just got off the roller coaster, hamburgers coming back up, etc. They can write a report about one, maybe the safety features, etc. They could compare two, and then go back and write an article about their impressions of something, etc. Or a leaflet. So there's lots of writing activities there too. I forgot to mention the first lot was speaking, second lot are writing. And there's some pretty basic ones, but you're just putting your students into an authentic context again. So you'll get them talking for a much longer time. So there's the skills. What about the language? How do we keep the context going in the language? And so what we're going to do here is take the same text and just go on in to a language lesson by continuing the context. And what better way of doing that? Of course, by doing guided discovery. And so the steps of my lesson are, make sure the students can see some target language in the context that they've just been reading or listening about. Give them a guided discovery handout so that they can teach themselves how the grammar works or how the vocabulary works, how the functions work from the context that they find the language in, and then, of course, do some practice. First control practice, second free practice. So again, for me, this is quite a traditional staged language lesson coming out of a text-based guided discovery. If you're not sure how this works, then I recommend this link. You can click on that and you'll find somebody giving you a short guide to guided discovery. No idea who. Maybe it's me. Check it out. Give it a click, but don't go too far. Come back here and read it later. Because we don't have too much time, we need to move straight on and exploit the language. So first of all, we're going to take the language out of the text. Remember, just a reminder, we're using Pre-Intermediate by Global by Lindsay Canfield. So first we want to continue the context, and we need to set the context for the language work we're going to do. We're not teaching the target language here. I mean, in my SATA training and also actually my Delta training quite a bit, you see people leading into a guided discovery by teaching the language, which kind of does the same thing twice, so no point. Let's get straight into, set the context and then get into the language. So how can we do that? Here, the book just gives you 3 sentences from the text and starts telling you about them. Here are the 3 sentences. They've built 11 parks around the world. I've been to an amusement park. Have you ever been to an amusement park? Which is kind of cheating a little bit, because only one of those sentences actually comes from the text. The other 2 don't. But at the same time, quite helpful because they put a question in there, which is nice. So, but if we rather take 2 sentences from the text, so here we have, they've built 11 parks around the world, and the first roller coaster was built in Russia, you'll see that we can actually use these to get the students thinking about different bits of language and contrasting them in context. Pretty straightforward. And we'd much rather do that through guided discovery to make it student-centered and get them doing the work. So instead of just telling them how we use the present perfect, as the book does here, we can use guided discovery to clarify MPF, meaning, pronunciation, and form of the target language, and use guided discovery, use the context to keep this precise and concise and let the students discover the language for themselves, which is exactly what we want them to do. So instead of this, we get this. No, we don't. This is that. Sorry, I just typed that out again so that you can see it clearly. It just gives you the 4 points, gives you 4 rules built on the language. But instead of that, you can give them the target language, present perfect here and the past here, and ask them questions about which do we use? Do we use the present perfect or the past simple to talk about completed past actions? And do we use present perfect or past simple to talk about the present consequence of the past action? And they are basically your CCQs. Great, so they can see from the context that we used the past simple for completed, the first roller coaster was built, and they used present perfect for the present consequences. They've built 11 parks around the world, therefore we have 11 parks to enjoy. Great. And follow that up in the feedback to your guided discovery with some context check questions. Are these good concept check questions? How many parks have they built and where did they build them? I'm not going to wait for answers because I know I'm short of time. The answer, of course, is no, because these test the context. And while context is the key word, it's not what we want to check. We want to check meaning. So let's have some better ones. Were the parks built in the past? Yes, they were. Can we enjoy them now? Yes, we can. So is the speaker thinking about the present consequence of the past action? Talking about the present and the past at the same time? Yes, they are. So, do we use the present perfect? Yes, we do. Follow meaning with pronunciation, and again, how to extend your context. Don't just drill the target language sentence, they've built 11 parks, but change it. They've built 11 parks, I've been to a park, I've been to a park, he's been to a park, she hasn't been to a park, have you been to a park? Etc. And then change that, change bits. Try and do some progressive substitution drilling. That will only take you 2 minutes, and it will get the students saying the target language many, many times in different contexts. And then onto the form. Just one little bit about the form. You have the form in context there. They have built 11 parks. And then you need to elicit from the students the generic form. And what better way to do it than by using colour? And so you have the auxiliary verb in the example in the same colour as the auxiliary verb in the generic form, the past participle in the example and in the generic form. So the students can link them together through the colours on your whiteboard. and see the generic form coming out of the context, another little way of exploiting the context. That takes us into the practice. First of all, we want to use the target language in a controlled environment, but again, it's key that the context is clear before we get the students to make choices. Here we're going to get them to make choices between present perfect and past simple, but they need to understand the context first. So what better way of doing that than by giving them a gist task? They need to read a text, even though it's got gaps in it, so give them a gist task. So here we have two short texts from the book. The first one is about Dan, the second one, the lady hasn't got a name, so give her a name. These are two friends of yours. My friend Dan, he's a photographer, and my friend Lily isn't a photographer. What else is different about them? And you haven't got time to read the two texts there, but the difference is he's been to over 50 amusement parks and she's never been to one. So they read the whole